Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're taking a look at the 2023 gubernatorial elections, and I'll be providing some updates on these races. It's September now, so we have around, actually under 2 months to go until these elections are held in November, and so I thought I'd do another temperature check on these races, and we're just going to get right into it here. We only have 3 to cover, so it won't be too long of a video today, and we're going to go in order of most competitive, or least competitive to most competitive, so we'll save the best for last. But we'll start with our safe Republican race staying the same. It's Louisiana, and this is a race I haven't done a ton of research, and that's mostly because I think Democrats really know that there's no way they can hold on to this seat. They have an incumbent governor in John Bel Edwards, but he's term limited, and if he were to run again, I don't even know if he would win. So this seat is already a very troubling one for Democrats. And they also don't really have a good candidate to replace John Bel Edwards. They're running, or the candidates that are running in the jungle primary are kind of, random figures. And that's not to discredit them. It's just that for a Democrat to win a red state like Louisiana, they have to be very, very qualified and very well-known statewide. And Democrats don't really have that. They don't have an incumbent statewide figure they can run. And, as a result, I think they're likely to lose this race. I don't know who the Republican that will win this race will be, but it will likely, I'm very confident it will be a Republican no matter what happens. Louisiana is a red state, and Democrats without John Bel Edwards have no path to victory here. And so that's our first one. And just to the east of Louisiana is Mississippi. Mississippi has gotten a lot of coverage as of late. We've seen polls that have shown it very close. We saw an internal poll that was, I believe, sponsored by the Brandon Presley campaign, who's a Democrat. They had him tied 46-46. And then we saw another poll that was a bit more nonpartisan, had Tate Reeves up by 11. And I don't think Tate Reeves will win by 11, but I do think he'll win by a good amount. I think he wins by maybe 8 or 9. And Democrats were hoping that this race could be competitive initially. Brandon Presley was seen as a good candidate, and I still think he is. He's still very much one of the strongest nominees, if not the strongest nominee they could have put up. But there was never really a path for Democrats to win this race. And I mean that in the sense that Democrats can come close in Mississippi. They can get maybe 47% of the vote there. They can make it within a few points. But that extra 2-3 points, those are Herculean. And Democrats have not won a statewide race in Mississippi since 2015, which was the Attorney General race, which obviously is a lot less important than a governor race, even though AG races are important, but governor's races receive a lot more press, and they're considered to be more important by the general populace. And so, since Democrats have gone nearly 9 years or 8 years without winning one of these, I don't really think there's reason to expect them to do so this year. Brandon Presley obviously is on the Mississippi Public Service Commission. He serves the Northern District, which did vote for Trump, so he has won a district that voted for Trump before, but people don't really care about their public service commissioner. I don't really think that if you went to his Mississippi Northern District, that many people would know who he is. They might have just voted for him because they, got a vibe or liked his ads, or maybe he ran a good ground campaign. I'm not sure. I will be completely honest, and I'll admit that I do not follow district-wide insurance, or not insurance commissioner. What am I saying? Public service commissioner elections. And so Brandon Presley might have done well in that position, but he's running for governor now. He's against a Republican incumbent. And to win statewide outside of your district, that's a very hard thing to do, especially when turnout dynamics in Mississippi really benefit Republicans, especially in off-year elections. Democrats do very well with black voters in the state. That's kind of their main demographic. But white voters are very, very conservative in Mississippi. In fact, Mississippi's, I think, in the top 3 states for white voters being the most Republican. And if Brandon Presley's only winning like 15% of white voters in a state that's, I think, nearly 60% white, there's no path for him. He can get to 45% at max, but he needs to really make some pretty major ground up with white voters. And in the polls, there's no evidence of that. Again, we've seen one poll I think funded by the Presley campaign that showed him tied, but we still haven't seen enough gains outside of that poll with white voters to suggest maybe there's something going on. I think Presley will do well with black voters, but white voters in Mississippi are needed, to win over more white voters. That's the way for Democrats to win Mississippi. Presley's not really doing that. There's also evidence that turnout from Democratic areas, specifically the western part of the state, kind of in this area on the border with Louisiana and Arkansas, which is majority black, as well as the city of Jackson. I think turnout there will be pretty poor. We've seen very, it's not too significant, but we've seen data that suggests that the uh, support for Brandon Presley in the state's 2nd district, which is the only Democratic congressional district of the 4, it's the majority black seat over here, that support for him in that district is really just not good. And he might be doing a little better in the more white Republican districts, but he's not doing well enough with turnout and enthusiasm among Democrats. And I think he's, again, running as a Democrat in Mississippi is no easy thing to do, but he really hasn't been able to straddle, holding on to his base, keeping them enthusiastic, and winning over white voters. I think he's kind of two in the middle, and I think because of that, he's going to lose this race probably by 9 points, if I had to guess. So that's Mississippi. It's likely Republican. Some people have it leaning Republican. I really don't think that that's a fair rating. I think that it's a lot less close than that. Tate Reeves will likely win re-election by a good amount. So that leaves Kentucky. This is a big one. Andy Beshear is the incumbent Democrat, but he only won by 0.4% in 2019. That was only, I think, 5,000 votes. So he is, from the start, he was always viewed as a vulnerable incumbent, especially because when he won, he defeated a very unpopular incumbent governor in Matt Bevin. And Bevin is obviously not the Republican nominee. It's Daniel Cameron, who's the attorney general, who won by 15% on the same ballot as Beshear. So Cameron was initially viewed to be a good candidate that would likely beat Beshear. In 2022, most people thought Beshear was on his way to losing re-election. But then in November, Democrats overperformed. And notably, and this is a really good example to use for Beshear, Laura Kelly in Kansas won re-election. She was the Democratic governor who in 2018 beat an unpopular Republican. She won re-election. Again, it was a bit closer, but she did get the job done. She did win narrowly. So Kelly winning, I think, really changed a lot of people's minds about Andy Beshear's chances. We've also seen Democrats outperform special election after special election, in the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, and they are doing really well just overall with these off-year elections in the year 2023. And so Beshear, I think, has momentum. He's very popular. He led the latest poll by 9%. And I think that he will likely be winning here. Now, it's not as sure of a thing as Mississippi re-electing Tate Reeves, but I do think Beshear is in a lead Democratic race, probably by a good amount. My model has him up by, I think, 4 or 5 points, and I think that's probably what he wins by. And so the problem for Republicans in Kentucky is that they have not been able to attack Beshear himself. They've tried, and they've tried specifically from a social perspective, gender, that kind of thing, but they have not been able to really hit on that just yet. And I'm being serious when I think that to unseat an incumbent governor, beating a senator is one thing. There's some people who will like their senator but will vote for the other party or the other candidate just because they align with that party more. Governors are more nonpartisan and they're more local. So people, if you're a Republican in Kentucky, and believe, there's many, Trump won the state by 23 points or something like that. So it is a very red state. But there are Republicans in Kentucky who are going to say, look, I'm a Republican. I'm going to vote Republican federally, but I like Andy Beshear. I think he's done a fine job as governor. There's no reason for me not to vote to reelect him, especially since, maybe my kids are in school. Maybe I'm fine with the way my taxes are right now. And people aren't going to want to risk it by voting for a new governor. And so that happens a lot. It happened in 2018 when Larry Hogan was reelected in Maryland despite being a Republican. Republicans have won Vermont and Massachusetts very recently because of that. Democrats on the flip side have won Louisiana and Kansas. And I think 2023 they're going to win Kentucky. The last governor, aside from Steve Sisolak, who had a net positive approval rating to lose, was in 2016. It was Pat McCrory, who was +1. Beshear is plus 20-something maybe. I don't know. It varies by poll, but he is consistently very popular in Kentucky. His approvals are in the high 50s, low 60s, and that's more than enough to get him to re-election here. So Dan Cameron really just has not been able to cut into him, and for that reason, since his approvals haven't really moved since the beginning of the election, I think he will win. So that's my prediction. I think Kentucky's the closest. I wouldn't be shocked if Republicans won it, but I do think Beshear is pretty clearly the favorite to win here. So let me know what you think. I want to see if we have any takes that people want to see in the comment section. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.